The stars had never been kind to humanity. For 300 years, humans had traveled among them, built colonies on distant worlds, and tried to find their place in a galaxy that did not want them. The alien empires looked at Earth and saw nothing worth respecting. They saw a young species, aggressive and primitive. Barely worth noticing, Captain Daniel Porter stood on the bridge of his ship, irresolute, and stared out at the endless black. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. 20 years he had served in space. 20 years of watching aliens treat his people like insects. The Resolute was not a warship. It was a cargo vessel, old and slow, carrying supplies between stations that no alien species wanted to visit. The work was honest but humiliating. Human ships got the worst jobs, the longest routes, the smallest payments. Lieutenant Laura Vance walked up beside him. She was younger than Daniel, with sharp eyes and dark hair pulled back tight. She had been his first officer for 5 years now. They understood each other without many words. "News from New Providence," she said quietly. Daniel did not turn his head. "How bad?" "The Kethvari have surrounded the colony. 200 warships. They are demanding the colonists surrender themselves." Daniel closed his eyes. New Providence was home to 3 million humans. Families, children, people who had left Earth. Hoping for a better life among the stars, the Kethvari were one of the strongest empires in the galactic concord. They were tall beings with gray skin and black eyes. They did not see other species as equals. They saw them as resources to be used. "What does the Concord say?" Daniel asked. Laura's voice was bitter. "Nothing." They held a vote. 7 empires refused to get involved. They said it was an internal matter between the Kethvari and their territory. New Providence is not Kethvari territory. They do not care. To them, we are not worth protecting. Daniel finally turned to look at her. There was anger in his eyes, but also something else. Something that had been building for a very long time. "Contact Earth Command," he said. "Tell them we are changing course." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Where are we going?" "New Providence. If no one else will stand with our people, then we will." The Resolute was just a cargo ship. It had no weapons that could threaten a Kethvari warship. Daniel knew this. Laura knew this. But they also knew they could not do nothing. Far away, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a different kind of work was happening. Deep inside a hollowed-out rock, thousands of humans worked on a project that had no official name. Those who knew about it called it Longbow, Chief Engineer Nathan. Cole wiped sweat from his forehead and looked up at the massive structure before him. It was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 2 kilometers long, made of the strongest metals humanity could produce. It's designed for a single purpose: to fire a piece of metal so fast that nothing could stop it. The aliens used energy weapons. Plasma bursts that could melt through hull plating. Particle beams that could cut ships in half. Graviton pulses that could crush metal like paper. Their shields were designed to stop these attacks, to absorb and scatter energy. But no one had thought to stop solid matter moving at incredible speed. Nathan had spent 30 years of his life on this project. He had sacrificed everything: marriage, children, a normal life. All for this moment. Dr. Grace Liu walked up behind him. She was a small woman with glasses and messy hair, always lost in thought. She was the one who had made the math work. She was the one who had proven it was possible. "The tests are complete," she said. "It works. It really works." Nathan nodded slowly. "How fast?" 12% of light speed. A 1,500-kilogram projectile hitting a target at that velocity will release more energy than a nuclear bomb. "And their shields?" Grace smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Their shields stop energy. They diffuse heat and radiation. They cannot stop a solid object moving faster than their sensors can track. The projectile will pass through their shields like they are not there." Nathan looked back at the weapon. Humanity had been pushed into a corner. They had been mocked and dismissed and treated as less than nothing. But they had not wasted that time. They had watched, they had learned, and they had built something the galaxy was not ready for. On Earth, In a secure room deep beneath the surface, Admiral Ryan Ortiz received a message. The Kethvari had given New Providence 48 hours to surrender. After that, it would begin orbital bombardment. 3 million lives hung in the balance. Ryan was an old soldier, with scars on his face and a heaviness in his heart. He had fought in the border wars when Earth was young in space. He had buried friends who died fighting enemies they could not beat, but today was different. He picked up a secure communicator and spoke 3 words. Deploy the Defiance. In orbit around a hidden moon. A ship unlike any other began to power up its engines. It was not large. It was not beautiful. It looked almost ordinary compared to the massive alien warships that ruled the galaxy, but mounted along its spine was something extraordinary. A railgun capable of changing everything. The crew of the Defiance knew what they were about to do. They knew the risks. They knew that if they failed, humanity might face the anger of every alien empire at once. But they also knew that their people were about to be enslaved, and that was something they could not accept. The ship turned toward New Providence and began to move. The galaxy was about to learn that it had made a terrible mistake. It had ignored humanity. It had dismissed them as weak and primitive and unimportant. It had forgotten that the most dangerous creatures are the ones with nothing left to lose. The Defiance moved through space like a ghost. Its engines were quiet, its hull painted in colors that made it hard to see against the darkness. Captain Ryan Ortiz sat in the command chair and watched the stars slide past on the main screen. Around him, 60 crew members worked at their stations. They were the best humanity had to offer. Engineers, weapons specialists, navigators, and soldiers. Every single one of them had volunteered for this mission. Every single one of them understood they might not come back. Lieutenant Kevin Drake sat at the weapons console. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with steady hands and calm eyes. His job was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. When the time came, he would be the one to pull the trigger. "How long until we reach the system?" Ryan asked. "For hours at current speed," the navigator replied. "The Kethvari fleet is holding position around New Providence. They have not detected us yet," Ryan nodded. The Defiance was small and quiet. The aliens were not looking for a single human ship. They were expecting surrender, not resistance. He thought about the weapon mounted on his ship. The railgun. It was such a simple idea that the aliens had never considered it. They had moved beyond physical projectiles thousands of years ago. Energy weapons were cleaner, more elegant, easier to power. Why throw rocks when you could throw lightning? But energy could be absorbed. Energy could be scattered. Energy could be stopped by the right kind of shield. A rock moving at 12% of light speed could not be stopped by anything. In a small room behind the bridge, Dr. Grace Liu was making final calculations. She had traveled with the Defiance to oversee the weapon's first real test. Her whole life had led to this moment. She remembered the day she first proposed the idea. She had been young then, fresh out of university, presenting her thesis to a room full of military officials. Most of them had laughed. A kinetic weapon in the age of plasma cannons? It seemed absurd, but one man had not laughed. General Marcus Webb, now long dead, had seen something in her equations. He had given her funding in secret. He had protected her project when others wanted to shut it down. Now, 30 years later, she was about to prove that he had been right. Chief Engineer Nathan Cole appeared in her doorway. He looked tired but excited. "The magnetic accelerators are fully charged," he said. "The projectile is loaded. We are ready." Grace looked up at him. "What about the targeting systems?" "Perfect. Kevin ran 3 simulations this morning. He hit the target every time." She took a deep breath. "Then we are really doing this. We are really doing this." In the Kethvari flagship, Commander Zethrak stood before a massive window and watched the planet below. New Providence was a green and blue world, covered in forests and oceans. The humans had built cities along the coasts, farms in the valleys, factories in the mountains. Soon, all of it would belong to the Kethvari Empire. Zethrak was tall, even for his species. His gray skin was marked with scars from a dozen battles. His black eyes showed no mercy, no doubt. He had conquered worlds before. This one would be no different. "Status report," he said without turning around. His second officer stepped forward. "The humans have not responded to our demands. The deadline expires in 6 hours. Good. Prepare the bombardment fleet. We will destroy one city as a demonstration. After that, they will surrender. And if they do not..." Zethrak finally turned, his lips pulling back in something like a smile. "Then we destroy another city, and another, until there is nothing left but ash and obedient slaves." He had no fear of human resistance. Their ships were weak, their weapons pathetic. The Galactic Concord had abandoned them. They had no allies, no hope. No future except the one he chose to give them. What he did not know was that a single ship was approaching his fleet. A ship carrying a weapon that would change everything. On the Resolute, Captain Daniel Porter received word that the Defiance was almost in position. He had brought his cargo ship to the edge of the system, close enough to watch but far enough to stay safe. "Are you sure about this?" Laura asked him quietly. "No," he admitted. "But I am sure about one thing. If this works, everything changes. If this fails..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kethvari formation. For a moment, nothing happened. The alien ships did not react. Their sensors had detected something, but they were not sure what. Then Commander Zethrak received the report. "A human vessel has entered the system. Small, no significant weapons detected. It appears to be a scout ship." Zethrak laughed. "One ship. They send one ship against 200? Destroy it. Make an example." 3 Kethvari destroyers turned toward the Defiance. Their plasma cannons began to charge. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Ortiz watched them come. He felt no fear. He felt something closer to satisfaction. "Kevin," he said calmly, "target the flagship." "Targeted, sir. Distance." 40,000 kilometers. Ryan nodded. At 12% of light speed, the projectile would cover that distance in just over 1 second. The Kethvari would not even see it coming. He looked at the main screen. The flagship was enormous, bristling with weapons. Protected by the most advanced shields in the galaxy, it would not matter. Fire. Kevin pressed the button. The ship shuddered as 2 kilometers of magnetic accelerators hurled a tungsten rod into the void. In the blink of an eye, it crossed the distance between the ships. On the Kethvari flagship, no alarm sounded. No warning light flashed. There was no time. One moment, Commander Zethrak was standing before his window, watching his destroyers move to attack. The next moment, there was only light. The projectile punched through the flagship at 36,000 kilometers per second. It did not slow down. It did not stop. It passed through the ship like a needle through water, and the energy it released tore the vessel apart from the inside. 4,000. Kethvari died in less than a second. The remaining ships froze. For a long moment, no one moved. No one could understand what had happened. Then the panic began. The silence on the bridge of the Defiance lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Lieutenant Kevin Drake stared at his console. His hands were shaking. He had just killed 4,000 beings with a single button press. The weight of it was almost too much to bear. Admiral Ryan Ortiz raised his hand for silence. The bridge went quiet. "Status of the target," he said. "Gone, sir." "Duh." The sensor officer's voice was barely a whisper. "The flagship is completely gone. Our sensors are picking up debris scattered across a 300-kilometer area. No life signs." Ryan nodded slowly. He had known the weapon was powerful. He had seen the test results. But knowing something and seeing it happen were very different things. And the rest of the fleet? They are not moving, sir. No, wait. Some of them are powering up their engines. They are retreating. No, not retreating. Running. They are running away. On the main screen, the Kethvari formation was falling apart. Ships were turning in every direction trying to escape. They had no idea what had happened. They only knew that their flagship had vanished in an instant, and whatever had done it might do the same to them. Fear was spreading through the enemy, fleet like a disease, thousands of kilometers away. Captain Daniel Porter watched from the bridge of the Resolute. He had seen the flash of light when the flagship died. Now he watched the alien warships scatter like frightened animals. "It worked," Laura said beside him. There were tears in her eyes. It actually worked. Daniel could not speak. For the first time in 20 years, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. On the surface of New Providence, 3 million humans looked up at the sky. They had been waiting for death. They had been preparing for slavery. Instead, they watched the Kethvari fleet flee in terror. No one understood what had happened. No one knew about the Defiance or the Railgun or the 30 years of secret work that had led to this moment. All they knew was that somehow, impossibly, they had been saved in the capital city. A young girl named Maria held her mother's hand and watched the alien ships disappear one by one. "Mommy," she said, "are the bad people going away?" Her mother picked her up and held her tight. "Yes, baby. The bad people are going away." The footage of the attack spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species, with access to the communication network, watched the same recording over and over. A single human ship, a flash of light, a massive Kethvari, a warship disappearing like it had never existed. The reactions were immediate and varied. On the Velinorian homeworld, the High Council convened an emergency session. The Velinorians were a peaceful species, known for their wisdom and their age. They had been traveling among the stars for 50,000 years. "This is unprecedented," the eldest council member said. "The humans have developed a kinetic weapon of extraordinary power. Our records show no equivalent technology in any known civilization. How did we miss this?" Another member demanded. "We have been monitoring Earth for centuries. How did they build such a weapon without our knowledge?" "Because we were not looking," the elder replied sadly. "We dismissed them. We ignored them. And now, we must face the consequences of our arrogance." On the Kethvari homeworld, the reaction was very different. Emperor Kethanar III screamed with rage when he received the news. His favorite nephew had been aboard that flagship. Commander Zethrak was dead, along with the finest warriors in the Empire. "Destroy them," he ordered. "Send every ship we have. Burn Earth to ash. Erase humanity from existence." But his admirals hesitated. They had seen the footage. They understood what it meant. "Your Majesty," the senior admiral said carefully, "the humans destroyed our most powerful warship with a single shot. If they have more of these weapons, then we die with honor." The Emperor shouted. The admiral swallowed hard. "With respect, Your Majesty, there may not be enough of us left to die. If they have 40 or 50 of these weapons, they could destroy our entire fleet before we get close enough to fight back." Wait. The Emperor stared at him with pure hatred. But he did not give the order to attack. On Earth, the mood was a strange mixture of celebration and fear. The people had won a great victory, but they knew the danger was not over. The Kethvari might still attack. Other empires might join them. Humanity had revealed its secret weapon, and now everyone knew about it. Ambassador Patricia Dunn received an urgent message from the Galactic Concord. They wanted to meet with her. They wanted to discuss the recent incident. They were using words like stabilization and cooperation and mutual understanding. Patricia read the message and smiled. For 300 years, humanity had begged for a seat at the alien table. They had asked politely, negotiated humbly, accepted insults and rejections without complaint. Now the aliens were coming to them. She wrote a simple response. "I will address the full council in person. Prepare a seat for the Earth delegation." On the Defiance, the celebration was quiet. The crew knew they had made history, but they also knew the cost. 4,000 Kethvari had died today. Most of them were probably just ordinary people doing their jobs. Kevin Drake sat alone in his quarters, staring at his hands. He was a hero now. He had saved 3 million lives. but he had also ended 4,000 others. Admiral Ortiz found him there an hour later. "It gets easier," Ryan said gently. "That is the terrible truth. It gets easier to live with." Kevin looked up at him. "Does it stop hurting?" "No, but you learn to carry the weight, and you remember why you did it. Those 3 million people on New Providence would be slaves right now if we had done nothing. Their children would have grown up in chains." Kevin nodded slowly. He did not feel better. But he understood the galaxy was changing. The species that everyone had ignored and dismissed had just announced their presence in the loudest possible way. And this was only the beginning. The Galactic Concord Station was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in neutral space, far from any empire's territory, a symbol of cooperation and peace. 12 species had worked together to create it. 12 species met there to discuss the future of the galaxy. For 300 years, humanity had been allowed to send observers to the Concord. They could watch the debates, listen to the decisions, but they could not vote. They could not speak unless spoken to. They were guests, not members. Ambassador Patricia Dunn had spent 15 years on this station. She knew every corridor, every meeting room, every quiet corner where deals were made in whispers. She had watched the other species ignore her people, mock them, treat them as children who would never grow up. Today was different. She walked toward the main council chamber with her head held high. Her assistant, a young man named Eric Wade, walked beside her, carrying a datapad. Behind them came a small escort of human security officers. The aliens they passed stared at them with new eyes. Some looked frightened. Some looked curious. None of them looked down on her anymore. "The whole station is talking about New Providence," Eric whispered. "Half of them think we are heroes. The other half think we are monsters." "What do you think?" Patricia asked. Eric was quiet for a moment. "I think we are survivors. And sometimes surviving requires terrible things." They reached the council chamber. The doors were massive, carved with symbols representing all 12 member species. Patricia had walked through these doors hundreds of times, but this was the first time they opened for her without hesitation. Inside, the representatives were already waiting. 12 species sat in a circle, each behind a curved desk equipped with translation devices. The room was designed to make everyone equal, but some species had always been more equal than others. High Arbiter Velanash of the Velanorians stood at the center. He was ancient, his skin wrinkled and pale, his eyes still sharp. He had led the Concord for 200 years. "Ambassador Dunn," he said, and the translation devices carried his words to everyone in the room. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me," Patricia replied smoothly. "Although I notice this is the first time you have used that word. Usually, humans are summoned, not invited." A ripple of discomfort passed through the chamber. Several representatives shifted in their seats. "The situation has changed," Velanash admitted. "The events at New Providence have raised many questions." "I am sure they have." Patricia took her position at an empty desk that had never been used before. "Please ask your questions." The Kethvari representative spoke first. He was a military officer, replacing the diplomat who had resigned in shame after the defeat. His voice was harsh with barely controlled anger. "Your species attacked and destroyed a Kethvari flagship without warning. 4,000 of our people are dead. This is an act of war," Patricia nodded calmly. "Your fleet surrounded a human colony with 200 warships. Your commander threatened to enslave 3 million of our people. What would you call that?" "A legitimate territorial claim. New Providence is not in Kethvari territory. It never was. You invaded our space. You threatened our civilians, and when your commander refused to withdraw, we defended ourselves." The chamber was silent. "That weapon," another representative said. "She was from the Mindori species, small beings known for their intelligence. How long has humanity possessed this technology?" Patricia smiled. 60 years. We have been developing it since before most of you knew our species existed." 60 years? The Mindori representative's voice rose with alarm. You have hidden a weapon of mass destruction from the Concorde for 60 years? We did not hide it. We simply built it quietly while you were too busy ignoring us to notice. You assigned observers to our homeworld. You monitored our communication networks. You read our scientific journals? And yet you missed this entirely. Patricia paused, letting the words sink in. Perhaps that says more about your observation methods than our secrecy. The room erupted in argument. Representatives shouted at each other, demanding answers, placing blame, expressing fear and outrage. Velinosh raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. Ambassador Dunn, he said slowly, the Concorde would like to know your species' intentions. You have demonstrated a weapon capable of destroying any ship in the galaxy. What do you plan to do with it? Patricia stood up straighter. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Humanity wants only one thing, to be treated as equals. For 300 years, we have been denied full membership in this Concorde. We have been dismissed as primitive. We have been treated as lesser beings, unworthy of protection or respect. She looked around the room, meeting every pair of alien eyes. That ends today. Earth is not asking for membership anymore. We are informing you that we will protect our colonies, our people, and our interests by any means necessary. Any species that threatens humanity will face the same response the Kethvari received. You cannot threaten the entire galaxy, the Kethvari representative snarled. Patricia turned to face him directly. We are not threatening anyone. We are simply stating the facts. Attack us, and we will defend ourselves. Leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. It is very simple. How many of these weapons do you have? Velinosh asked quietly. 47 operational platforms. 12 more under construction. We have enough to make any war against humanity extremely costly. The number hung in the air. 47 weapons that could destroy a flagship with a single shot. Enough to cripple any fleet in the galaxy. The balance of power had shifted. Every species in the room understood that. The question now was what they would do about it. Velinosh nodded slowly. The Concorde will need time to discuss these developments. In the meantime, we request that humanity refrain from further military action. As long as our people are not threatened, we have no reason for military action. Patricia gathered her datapad. But I would remind this council that New Providence is still recovering from your failure to act. 3 million humans almost died because you chose to do nothing. She walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned back one last time. The galaxy is changing, whether you like it or not. Humanity is no longer a species you can ignore. I suggest you start treating us accordingly. The doors closed behind her. 6 months passed after the shot that changed the galaxy. The Kethvari Empire never recovered from that day. Commander Zethrak had been more than just a military leader. He had been a symbol of Kethvari's strength, proof that their species could not be defeated. His death shattered that illusion. 3 species that had lived under Kethvari control for centuries declared their independence within weeks of New Providence. They had seen a single human ship destroy the mightiest vessel in the Kethvari fleet. If humans could do that, perhaps they could too. The rebellion spread. The Kethvari tried to crush them, but their confidence was broken. Their commanders hesitated where they once would have attacked without mercy. Every time they gathered a fleet, they wondered if a human railgun was waiting in the darkness. Emperor Kethenor III died in his sleep 2 months after the incident. Some said it was illness. Others whispered that it was poison delivered by nobles who blamed him for the disaster. His successor was young and cautious, more interested in holding what remained than in seeking revenge against Earth. On the Concorde station, Ambassador Patricia Dunn received visitors every day. Species that had refused to meet with her before now sought her advice and friendship. Trade agreements that had been impossible to negotiate became easy. Doors that had been closed for centuries opened wide. Humanity was no longer invisible. Captain Daniel Porter received his promotion 3 months after the battle. He stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Vigilant, and looked around with something like wonder. Twin railguns ran along the vessel's spine. A crew of 200 served under his command. Laura Vance stood beside him, now promoted to commander. It feels strange, does it not? She said, what does? Being respected, being feared. For so long, we were nothing. Now they look at us differently. Daniel nodded. I am not sure I like it. Fear is not the same as respect. No. But fear keeps us safe. And maybe with time, fear will become respect. He hoped she was right. On Earth, Dr. Grace Liu continued her work. The first generation of railguns had proven the concept. Now she was designing the second generation, smaller and more efficient, capable of being mounted on ships half the size of the Defiance. Chief Engineer Nathan Cole worked beside her, as he had for 30 years. They were building the tools that would protect humanity for generations to come. Do you ever regret it? Nathan asked her one evening. Grace looked up from her equations. Regret what? Creating this? Turning us into killers. She was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes, when I think about those 4,000 Kethvari, I feel the weight of it. But then I think about the 3 million on New Providence. The children who are alive today because of what we built, and I make peace with it. We did not choose to be pushed into a corner. We did not choose to be threatened and ignored and treated like animals. But when they backed us against the wall, we chose to fight back. I cannot regret that. Nathan nodded slowly. He felt the same way. The guilt was there, but so was the pride. They had done something extraordinary. They had changed the course of history. Admiral Ryan Ortiz retired from active service 6 months after New Providence. He had done what he set out to do. He had proven that humanity could defend itself. Now it was time for younger officers to carry that burden. Lieutenant Kevin Drake was promoted to captain, was given command of the Defiance itself. The ship that had fired the first shot was now the most famous vessel in the galaxy. Serving on it was considered the highest honor. Kevin still thought about that day sometimes. The button under his finger, the flash of light, the 4,000 lives that ended in an instant. The weight never fully went away, but he learned to carry it, just as Admiral Ortiz had promised. On the Concord station, a Velenorian journalist requested an interview with Ambassador. Done. The Velenorians were the oldest and wisest species in the galaxy. They had watched younger civilizations rise and fall for 50,000 years. The journalist was named Telvac. He had covered galactic politics for centuries. He had seen many things, but humanity fascinated him. Your species confuses me, he admitted as they sat in Patricia's office. You are young. You are aggressive. You fight among yourselves constantly, and yet you have achieved something remarkable. What is that? Patricia asked. You have made the entire galaxy reconsider its assumptions. The Kethvari thought you were weak because you were small. The Concord ignored you because you were different. Everyone underestimated you. That was their mistake. Yes. But I want to understand why. Why did you choose such a brutal form of warfare? Energy weapons are precise. They can disable without destroying. Your railguns are crude by comparison. They do not wound. They annihilate. Patricia considered the question carefully. For 300 years, we tried to earn your respect through peaceful means. We were polite. We were patient. We followed your rules. And you dismissed us anyway. She leaned forward. So we built something you could not ignore. Something that spoke a language everyone understands. We did not want to be cruel. We wanted to be safe. And sometimes safety requires showing that you are willing to do terrible things. Telvac nodded slowly. And now that you have your safety, what does humanity want? Patricia smiled. The same thing every species wants. A future for our children. A place among the stars. The chance to grow and learn and become something better than we are today. You think you can achieve that? Even after everything that has happened. I have to believe we can. Otherwise, what was the point of any of it? The journalist left with more questions than answers. But he understood something that many of his fellow Astenarians did not. Humanity was not a problem to be solved or a threat to be contained. They were a species finding their way through a galaxy that had never wanted them. They had made mistakes. They would make more, but they would survive. That much was certain. The stars stretched out across the endless void, cold and beautiful and full of possibility. Somewhere among them, human ships patrolled the borders of their space, railguns ready, crews vigilant. They were no longer the forgotten species. They were no longer the weak ones who could be pushed aside. They were humanity. And the galaxy would never underestimate them again.